our sponsor is Tessa Walsh. Tessa, do you want to say a couple words?
Yeah.
Come on, Tessa. Kelsey couldn't make it today, so Tessa is going to help me out explaining what to do with these sign-up sheets. Go.
Everybody gets credit for the hours they're here. On the front tables and on the third tables, there's a sign-up sheet. You just print your name, your company name, and your license. And make sure that we get your credit hours out too.
Is that it?
That's it.
Short and sweet. Yeah, Tessa and I go back a long ways. About how many years? About 15 or so. See, she was just 12 back then.
Thanks, Brian.
Yes, yeah, Tessa's been wonderful. So be sure to sign up on the sheet, because if your name is not on that sheet, you will not get a continuing education hour. That would really be a bummer. If you could, write your name and your company name, and then of course your email address. Very important. Okay. A little bit about Movement Mortgage. If you go on the internet and look up Movement Mortgage, you'll find that there's only one office here in Oregon. That's me. But Movement Mortgage is much larger than just here at Amber Glen. There's a little more than 300 offices nationwide. It's actually the 5th largest purchase lender in the country. So if you go to any other state and ask who's Movement Mortgage, they'll tell you. Everybody else knows in every other state. Hopefully in Oregon, you'll know when you ask somebody who Movement Mortgage is, you'll say, it's those guys at Amber Glen. Well, there will be more offices, trust me. Could I get all the staff to come up? Okay. There is 3 primary things. Okay. There's 3 major things that you might think of when you think of Movement Mortgage. And when you log in online and check it out, the biggest one is you're going to hear about 671. Anybody knows what 671 is? No? Martin knows? Okay. 671. Movement is well known for this. 6 stands for 6-hour process, or 6-hour underwriting. 6-hour underwriting. What Movement does that's unlike any other lender is they actually underwrite every application up front before you ever start showing houses. Your borrower will not just get a willy-nilly pre-approval letter. Your borrower will have a loan commitment letter before you start showing houses. So when your offer is up against all of those other competitive offers out there, they're going to look at the underwriting commitment letter much stronger than any other offer out there. Of course, there's always cash, but next best to cash is an underwriting commitment letter. 7. 7 stands for 7-day processing. Believe it or not, Movement Mortgage is well known for having a goal of processing every loan within a 7-day period. Our processors are rewarded a bonus for getting the loan done in 7 days. They get double their bonus if they get it done in 5 days. So as much as possible, they're incentivized to get the loan done quickly. The 1 day to close. I can hear a pin drop. 1 day closing. So in most cases, when the appraisal comes in, all of the other conditions had been well satisfied, the CD's already been signed, done way early in the transaction. As soon as that appraisal is done, we normally close, have docs to title within 24 to 48 hours after the appraisal shows up. I don't think anybody has ever seen that happen before. We do it regularly. So that's the one thing that the primary thing that Movement is well known for. The second thing that Movement is well known for is condos. we like condos. A lot of other lenders don't like to do anything with condos. We like condos, especially if you're looking for a condo for an FHA borrower. You know how cumbersome that can be sometimes? Okay? If you're a listing agent and you have a condo that's not FHA approved, we will get that property approved for you at no charge. Okay? It does take a few weeks, so please, if you know of a listing coming up that you need to get FHA approved, call us, we'll get it set up. The third thing that Movement Mortgage is well known for is renovation loans. And that's why you're here today, renovation loans. 3 of the 4 founding members of Movement Mortgage all came from renovation. We have a department set up just for renovation loans. These guys know exactly how to do renovation loans. And our speaker here today is going to give you the 10 best secrets to getting those renovation loans done quickly. And it really has to do with the third party there, dealing with a contractor, getting through all of that stuff. That's the only thing that sets a renovation loan apart from any other transaction. Okay? So, without any further ado, our guys, we introduce yourselves. Moses.
My name is Moses Hernandez, and I've been with Movement Mortgage since 2012.
Don.
I'm Don Williams. I've been with the movement for about 6 months. Been in the biz 15 years.
And
Esto es en español. Anybody speak Spanish? My name is Martin Monsivais, and I've been with that movement for, I forgot, we've been there for a long time. But I do a lot of my loans is with in the Hispanic community. So if anybody is interested in that.
And my name is Ty Starr. I've been with him for over a year.
And yes, we have Susan and Yolanda.
I'm Yolanda Hawkins, and I was with Movement Mortgage for about over a year as well, and I also work with Hispanic community.
And I'm Susan Bullman, and I've been with Movement for over a year.
Excellent. And if you have a favorite loan officer that you like to work with and love to work with, we would love to have them part of the Movement family. So, without any further ado, Larry Hay. Take it away, Larry.
Today's my first day, so you have to let me know how I'm doing. Actually, my name's Larry Hay. Own a company called Inspectec West, and a lot of you in here we've done quite a bit of business with over the years. We're running close to 30 years in the business. My son Corey, that's doing some of the camera work in the back, has been with me for 20 years. And then I've got two other boys that are with us, and then a daughter that works with us as well. So it's kind of a family business. We are a little bit different than most home inspection companies. We are a full-service home inspection company. Along with online booking for all of your inspection needs, we also do sewer scopes, we do radon testing, and for those of you who might be listening in the Portland metro area, we also do the energy scores as well. My primary focus is the 203K renovation loans. So I don't do many home inspections anymore. I leave that up to the younger guys that aren't going to get caught in the crawl space because they put on too much weight. This is a great program. I'm pretty passionate about this program. In the last 10 years, we've gone from just doing a couple of these a year to, I think last year we did over 50 of them. Okay? So, in fact, Brian and I have one going right now. Is that the one where the goats were living in there upstairs? That's what I thought. That was an intriguing house. But he is right on the money when he talks about their closing process. Like I said, I did about 50 to 60 of these last year. And Movement closed it quicker than anybody else in the business. Okay? The paperwork was quick. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew what to get to the contractor. They knew what the borrower needed. They knew what documents that the HUD consultant had to take care of in advance, and it closed quickly. So If you are thinking about, if you do have a client, I would highly recommend that. So one of the things we want to do here is we want to try to figure out how to get from, let's see, let's go to that first picture, Brian. Go one more. Let's get to the house, yeah. Okay. So what we want to do is, one of the things I think we all can agree on is that inventory is difficult right now. So a lot of times we've got to figure a way to get from this to that next picture, which shows us the finished product, okay? So this house started out, I'm not exactly sure what the purchase price was, but I think it was in the mid 100s. And they put about 100,000 in it. And they did this project in 6 months, and they went from what you saw before to the finished product. And it was really one of the really great looking houses that we've done. So the process starts like this. So you've got a borrower, and they're well qualified, and you're looking for a house, you can't find anything in their market at all. But what you can find are rundown properties that need a lot of work. Now, the problem with rundown properties is that generally the seller has no money to kick in to do any sort of renovations, okay? And a lot of times their borrower is well qualified, but they don't have 100 grand worth of cash sitting around either to do any renovations. So how do you take a house that needs quite a bit of work and get it to this when it looked like it did before, okay? So HUD has a couple of different packages, renovation loans. They have a full 203K, which is essentially you can do anything to that house except replace the foundation. Or they have what they call a limited. A limited has a dollar amount that you can't exceed, which is $30,000, okay? And it is primarily designed for cosmetic repairs. So you've got a house that, say maybe sells in the 300s, your people have got good credit, they're well qualified for it, but it needs interior paint, it needs new carpet, the appliances in the kitchen really need to be replaced, or maybe a furnace needs to be replaced. That limited loan is exactly for those sort of repairs. Okay? The 203K full, which requires a HUD consultant, the limited does not require a HUD consultant. Okay? And I'll go into that just a little bit later, but the 203K full, you can literally take the house from the foundation down and go all the way up. Okay? You can replace everything. For some reason, what HUD will not allow you to do is completely remove the foundation. You can only repair it. Okay? So if you have a situation where you have a foundation that really needs to be completely redone, there are some ways for the contractor to accomplish that and still meet the HUD guidelines. So, but you'd have to talk to me. We could talk about that later on. So, one of the things that we need to do is we need to figure out after we've got a signed agreement between your borrower and the seller is what's the next step. Okay. So home inspection is generally the next step. Okay. Once you've completed the home inspection and your borrower has decided that, okay, I know the house needs a lot of work, but there's nothing in here that really wants to make me run down the road, I'm going to go ahead with it, we're going to do a renovation loan. So what's the next step? The next step is to get a HUD consultant involved to do what they call a feasibility study. Okay? A feasibility study is essentially a document that tells the borrower, here's what absolutely has to be done to meet the renovation guidelines. Okay? Now the renovation guidelines, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, Brian, but are basically FHA guidelines. They might be a little bit more extensive than that, but basically you're talking about health and safety issues, structural issues, any of those issues that are going to pop up have to be completed under the renovation loan. Okay? So the feasibility study usually takes, the HUD consultant will come out and essentially walk the property and take notes and then put a feasibility study together. So one of the things that happens on a feasibility study is that a lot of times we'll have a borrower show up and an agent show up, and everybody thought that they could get all the renovation done for $25,000 or $30,000, and that's about what they're qualified for. And once the feasibility study is completed, because I put bids together with the feasibility study, I'll put numbers to the line items that meet the minimum guidelines, is all of a sudden you got $80,000, okay? Because what HUD requires are sometimes more than what the borrower wants to do under the renovation loan, okay? So as an example, I show up to the property and the borrower says, now I know it really needs paint on the outside, but the siding's good and I'm gonna paint it this summer, okay? Well, the problem with that is that HUD will not allow that, okay? HUD wants all the repairs completed under their renovation loan. So there's $5,000 to paint the exterior that the borrower didn't think he had to do, okay? Or when he did the home inspection, it identified the fact that they had galvanized water pipes, but they really were okay. Well, under HUD guidelines, galvanized water pipes have, essentially they all need to be replaced. So there's another $4,000 or $5,000 on some houses that again, the borrower didn't think that they had to do those repairs, and they're gonna have to do those repairs, okay? So that's what the feasibility is designed to do, is to show the borrower whether or not this is a feasible project given their parameters for lending and qualification, okay? Feasibility studies generally run anywhere from $150 to $350, okay? And I'll tell you how that's broken out. Occasionally I'll get a homeowner that does not want to do a home inspection, okay? So I'm going to be tasked with trying to protect that borrower to a higher degree than if I was just doing a feasibility study for the renovation process. So we'll be a little bit more involved than just a normal feasibility study that usually just takes 45 minutes to an hour walking around the house and making some notes and then doing the paperwork at home, okay? So I do recommend that most homeowners do get their home inspection in advance. I am, as far as I know, the only consultant that will allow another company to do a home inspection and then still put the feasibility study together. Most consultants want to do the home inspections themselves. I don't have a problem working with one of your home inspectors. We do have 4 inspectors in our company. If it's possible, we do try to do it if that's what the client would like, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm good without that. So then the next phase. So we've done a feasibility study. The borrower and the contractor have decided, or the borrower's decided that he wants to move forward. So he's chosen a general contractor. So the feasibility study then goes to the general contractor. The general contractor then has to include all of those numbers that I have in there, or at least those repairs. He may have his own numbers, but he's going to have those repairs. They have to include those repairs to the want list that the borrower wants to do. So I may have $50,000 worth of must do, but the bid is going to run $85,000 or $90,000 because the new buyer wants new kitchen cabinets. They're moving a couple of walls. They're putting an island in. They're redoing the bathrooms, even though the bathrooms essentially passed FHA standards. But they want to really upgrade the house. So the general contractor bid is going to be different than the feasibility study. So the general contractor bid, and here's where we run into problems, and here's where we run into timeline issues with closing, meeting the closing dates that have been set from the very beginning, is that the general contractor needs to know up front that when he puts his bids together, he has to break them down into labor and materials with a narrative, okay? Because one of the issues that we're trying to do here is that somehow we have to prove to the appraiser that the value is going to be there. The appraiser's a huge cog in this thing, okay? If we just give him a bid that says we're going to paint this outside, we're going to put a roof on it, and we're going to redo 2 bathrooms, $45,650. Well, it doesn't fly, because number one, the appraiser wants to know, well, what kind of a roof is going on? what sort of repairs, what sort of appliances are going into the bathrooms. Are we putting tile on the floor? Is it a tile shower? Is it a fiberglass shower? So, general contractor has to be very explicit about what he's gonna put in his bid, and it has to be in such a format that when he gets it to me, which is the next step after that, so once the general contractor puts his bids together, the next step is it comes back to the HUD consultant. The HUD consultant then is tasked with qualifying the general contractor bids, okay? So essentially what I have to do at that point then is sit down and rework a full bid workup based on what the general contractor is telling us is going to be in this house, okay? So when I'm done with that, I'm going to match the two bids up and see where we are. I'm going to look at mine and I'm going to look at his. And if there's a huge difference in there, then we have to figure out why am I either too high or too low, or why is the general contractor too high or too low. So we need to qualify those bids because, number one, what HUD wants us to do is to make sure that the borrower is protected. Even though the fiduciary responsibility of the HUD consultant is to HUD, okay? But I am tasked with making sure that those bids are, that they meet what the general outline of the project was going to be, that proper permits are going to get pulled and paid for, and that the bids are neither too high nor too low. Okay? Now, once I've qualified those bids, then I put together what's called a work write-up. So the work write-up essentially goes, that's the document that goes to the appraiser so that he can assess value. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, Brian, but I believe that the appraiser, or can't order the appraisal until the work write-up has been delivered. Is that correct?
That is correct. You do need it.
Right. So a lot of times, if I'm having a problem, if we're running behind and people are looking for an extension, it's that the general contractor either didn't give me the bids in a timely manner, or when I did get the bids, I had to go back and ask him to redo a bunch of stuff because I couldn't really understand, couldn't qualify his bid to essentially make sure that it covered everything that we needed to cover, and that it didn't adequately tell the appraiser how the value was going to be there. So the costs associated with the HUD consultant. These costs are mandated by HUD, and they are on a sliding scale. Okay? They essentially start out at about $600, and then they go up to the first $100,000, they go up to $1,000, and then after that it's 1%. Okay? I generally cap my fees at around $1,500. I don't charge the full 1%. If we have a $200,000 renovation loan, I'm capping my fees at around $1,500. Okay? Which HUD actually allows me to do. I have to stay within the guidelines up to $100,000. They require that I stay in there. So if you have around $50,000 worth of renovation that you're going to do, those fees are going to be around $800. Okay, but it is a sliding scale. HUD allows your borrower to be reimbursed at closing up to $1,200 worth of fees that you paid in advance for home inspections, sewer scopes, radon, feasibility studies, work write-ups. Okay, so essentially, almost anything that your borrower puts out in advance of closing, they can recoup back at closing. Now, they're going to put it in their loan somewhere, so it's not free money, but they can get reimbursed at closing. Okay, I require that those fees be paid to me prior. Well, let me put it this way. I would really like to be paid prior to closing. I'd hate to tell you how much I got sitting out that's not paid. So if you have a borrower that money's tight, and money's always tight essentially when we're working with these, particularly if you've got a house that's say, low 200s, money's usually pretty tight for the borrower, and I will allow to be paid at closing. I just want some assurances from them, and I will have them sign a contract that says that if it all goes south, and for whatever reasons they decide not to move forward, I'm gonna get paid for whatever work I've completed up to that point. Okay? But we do try to work with borrowers as much as we can with payment. So, actually, a lot of times the problem with payment for us is not so much with the borrower, it's that the loan gets sold and I don't get paid, didn't get paid at closing like we're supposed to, and now we're chasing down the new lender that holds the paper trying to get paid. But Movement Mortgage, you guys hold your paper. Let me just touch on that one minute. How are we doing for time? Touch on that. It's important. That's a very important thing because if you're dealing with a mortgage broker or a bank that doesn't hold their own paper until it's closed, what can happen and has happened a number of times to me is that the loan closes. The general contractor is required to start within 30 days after the loan closes. Okay. Well, the dang loan gets sent somewhere else. It gets sold to somebody else. He started. He gives me a call and says, "Hey, I got $10,000 worth of stuff done here. I need to get paid." We don't know where it went. We don't know who owns it. Okay? And a couple of times, the general contractors actually had to pull off the project for over 2 months until they figured out who owned the loan so that we could get the proper paperwork going. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about how the, lose that?
Maybe the battery's going down.
Could be.
I have to adjust the volume. Keep talking so I can, I'm sorry.
You're talking to old school here.
She was adjusting. Oh, your volume.
Was I too loud?
Oh, you're fine.
My wife says I'm too loud. Can you guys still hear me? Oh, okay, all right. So let's talk about how the contractor gets paid. So there's a subtle difference between limited and the full 203Ks. On the limited, the lender will allow the general contractor to receive 50% of his funds up front and then collect the balance when the project's completed. With the full 203K, the general contractor gets absolutely no money up front. Okay? So they have progress payments. They can do up to 6. My paperwork says 5, but they've recently changed that to 6. The general contractor can get paid 6 different times over the life of the renovation, which is generally capped at 6 months. You can do an extension on it if you have to, but it's generally you should be able to finish the project within 6 months unless you run into some weather or product issues. Okay? So the general contractor needs to be paid. Simple process. And again, Movement Mortgage is really quick on this stuff. So what happens is that the general contractor, he started within 30 days. He's got part of the foundation completed, or foundation work completed. He's got some of the exterior walls done. He's got some interior stuff he's done. He's got some electrical, some plumbing done, and he needs money to pay his sub so he can keep moving on. Okay. So all it takes is the HUD consultant needs an invoice from the general contractor that states what he wants to get paid for. Okay. He sends it to us. We make an appointment to come out to the property, and that's one of the things that we do better than anybody else is that we can respond to contractor requests for draws quicker than anybody that any HUD consultant around right now. Okay. So we'll get out within 1 or 2 days. Go out to the property, take a look at what's been completed, make sure that if there were permits required, the permits have been pulled. Okay. Make sure that the work that's done meets industry standard. Make sure that it meets the borrower's standards. Okay. If we don't have any problems there, then what we do is we take pictures of everything. General contractor signs off, the borrower signs off, the HUD consultant signs off. We send the paperwork in, and they return the check. Okay. That whole process is usually done within 5 to 7 days. Now, where I run into problems with those being delayed is either the general contractor or the borrower were not on site when we did our paperwork. Okay, and so we didn't get signatures from everybody, so we got to send it by email. So sometimes it'll take a couple days for that to come back. But once we turn that paper around, it gets into the bank, they're very quick to turn that stuff around. Now, the other thing that the general contractor has to know is that they're gonna hold back 10% of every draw, and they're gonna pay it at the end of the project. That 10% is so that so your borrower's got a little bit of a hammer to make sure that his punch list is completed at the end. Okay. Now, the other thing that's